So let us begin. The time is 10:01. It is April 27, 2023. I call Planning Board meeting to order. We are joined by Vice Chair Bailey.
Morning.
Commissioner Washington.
Good morning.
Commissioner Dorner.
Hello.
And Commissioner Giraldo.
Good morning.
And I'm Chair Shapiro. Please note, as we move on to the business at hand, please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with a link provided in the email provided by the planning board office or listen by phone by utilizing the caller number provided in the email. And of course, anyone may tune in to watch the planning board meeting via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form, which we'll see referenced on the screen before you. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our Deputy Planning Director, Derek Berlage. We have Delisa Coleman, our Senior Counsel. We are also joined by Jessica Jones, our Planning Board Administrator, Joe Parsons, our Senior Technical Hearing Writer, James Hunt, the Division Chief for the Development Review Division, and our staff members, Kenneth Flanagan and Ryan Cron, who are helping us with technology behind the scenes. So with that, we'll move on to our first item, which is item 2. I would look for a motion to approve the draft minutes of April 20th, 2023.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Next, we have our consent agenda items. Is there anyone here or any board member who wishes to oppose the staff's recommendations on items 4B, C, D, and E?
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of the staff findings and approval on the items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Now move on to our regular agenda items. First is item 5, specific design plan SDP 0002 H14 Cameron Grove Phase 2, Lot 83, Block A. We have Ms. Gupta, who will give you the staff presentation. Don Settle will be representing the applicant. I don't believe we have anyone signed up to speak on this, and we will turn it over to Ms. Gupta for a staff presentation.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I'm Ridula Gupta with the Urban Design section. Item number 5 on the agenda is a specific design plan SDP-0002-H14, titled Cameron Grove Phase 2, Lot 83, Block A. This homeowner's minor amendment proposes the construction of a 10-foot by 16.25-foot sunroom at the rear of an existing single-family detached dwelling within the rear yard setback. Based on the findings presented in the technical staff report, staff recommends that the planning board approve this specific design plan. This would conclude staff's presentation. However, I would be happy to provide additional detailed presentation of this item if required. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta. Commissioners, if there's no questions for staff, I will turn to the applicant to see if there's anything additional that she would like to bring. Ms. Settle? You're on mute.
Good morning. Thank you all very much for your time this morning. I work for Stone Ridge Outdoor Living and representing Mr. and Mrs. Young, hoping to get the approval for the construction of a sunroom on the rear of their property. This project has been approved by the Homeowners Association. It has the support of the neighbors. It does back up to a wooded area, and there are several other projects in this development that have similar sunrooms and additions. And we just very much appreciate your consideration and granting an approval for this project.
Thank you, Ms. Settle. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or staff? If there are no questions, Commissioners, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve SDP-0002-H14.
So does the dog, evidently.
I'd just like to know somebody's dog just activated my dogs.
Second motion.
So I did hear the motion by Commissioner Washington. I didn't hear the second. Who seconded it?
Bailey.
Okay.
Either one.
Good motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion besides canine discussion? Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Gerhalda.
Chief votes aye. So do I.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. Apparently Ginger Snap votes aye as well. The ayes have it, 5-ish to 0. Thank you, Ms. Settle, and thank you, Ms. Gupta. And we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hold on one sec.
Oh.
Okay, thank you all. She's been properly chastised. Next item is item 6 on our agenda. This is ROSP 4785-03, Traditions at Beachfield Enterprise Road. We have Ms. Lockhart who gives staff presentation. Mr. Haller is representing the applicant. I will turn to Ms. Lockhart.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I am Dominique Lockhart with the zoning section. Item number 6 on the agenda before you is revision of site plan ROSP-4785-03 titled Traditions at Beachfield Enterprise Road. The proposal is to revise the site layout and provide architecture and subsequent infrastructure on previously approved parcels 3 through 6, which contain the condominium units. The applicant is proceeding under the prior ordinance utilizing the transitional provisions of 27-1704E, which allows subsequent revisions or amendments to development approvals grandfathered under the zoning ordinance, which the original development was approved. The original special exception SE 4785 was approved in 2018 to allow a planned retirement community. With this revision, the total number of dwelling units for the overall Traditions at Beachfield development will be reduced from 491 to 489. Based on the findings presented in the technical staff report, staff recommends that the planning board approve revision of site plan ROSP-4785-03 and associated type 2 tree conservation plan TCP2-014-2017-03, subject to the conditions contained in the staff report. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Lockhart? If there are none, I'll turn to the applicant's representative. Mr. Haller, anything you want to add?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thomas Haller on behalf of the applicant. I do not have anything to add to Ms. Lockhart's presentation. We are in full agreement with the staff's findings and the proposed conditions. I do want to note for any of the planning board members who may have driven past the site either from Route 50 or from Enterprise Road, you've seen a lot of activity, and I just wanted to give you a quick update just so that you would understand how this property kind of sits within the overall development. As you can see from the aerial photograph that's before you, the property that was covered by the special exception, which was about 83 acres, included multiple different housing types, all of which are age restricted. In the far left corner, I guess that'd be the northwest corner of the site, you can see a building under construction. That is the assisted living facility, which contained 192 units, 100 of them for individual independent living, 60 for assisted living, and 32 for memory care. That facility is almost complete. They're hoping to obtain their use and occupancy permit and move people in within the next month. The single family detached homes and single family attached homes are all well under construction on the west side of the stream crossing. And they have many sales already on the books and are ready to start conveying homes and having people begin moving in. You may remember a few months ago that we had approval of the multifamily rental building, which is in the southwest corner of the site, just south of Traditions Boulevard. And that property, if you recall, is for affordable housing targeted for seniors. And that project, they have finally resolved all of their financing issues, and they're getting ready to get started here very shortly. And then the final piece of the puzzle are the buildings that are before you today. These are the 4 condominium buildings that were proposed from the outset. The builder on these for these units is Lennar, which is also the builder for the single family attached and detached homes, which they've had good success with. So these will round out the project, and there will be quite a variety of housing types for seniors within the area, as well as a fairly wide range of affordability options as well, given the different development types. So I just wanted to give you that update with regard to the progress of the community. It's really turning into what we believe will be a premier retirement community in the county, and will serve the Woodmore and Enterprise Road corridors very well. I'll be happy to answer any questions. We have several team members here as well who can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Haller. Besides members of the team, there's nobody signed up to speak on this matter. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? If there are none, then what is your pleasure?
Just one point of personal privilege. Just wanted to ask Mr. Haller how he's doing. It sounds better, so just wanted to make sure you're doing okay.
I am. I'm fully recovered. It took a while, but I'm back.
Excellent.
Glad to hear that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
with that,
Haller, before we do that, Mr. Haller, you asked me to check in with myself after all my allergies, and I did take a COVID test, and it was negative, but thank you for checking previously.
Good. I'm glad it was.
Yes. Commissioner Washington, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve ROSP-4785-03 and TCP 2-014-2017-03.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
But
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Haller. Glad you're feeling better. And thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Moving on to our next item is item 7 on our agenda. This is DSP 21032-5801 Arbor Street property. This was continued for March 16th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. This is a request for a continuance again. We'll turn to Ms. Lockhart, who will give the staff presentation, and I also want to note that Mr. Foreman will be representing the applicant. We did have 1 or 2 folks who signed up to speak. I'm not sure they're aware that this is a request for a continuance, but after we hear from staff and the applicant, we'll turn to them to afford them the opportunity to speak. But again, this is a request for continuance. Ms. Coleman?
I just wanted to remind the chair that he needs to swear in any persons who are going to testify today if the people who signed up to speak want to actually speak.
So is that in, all right, I just want to make sure. So this is, even though it's a request for a continuance, Ms. Coleman advised me, do they have the opportunity to speak on the merits of the case if this is just a request for a continuance?
No, it would still be based upon the continuance, but if you're giving them the opportunity to speak and it's kind of part of the process of whether or not the board is going to grant the continuance, you should swear them in.
Okay, I don't have my swearing in language for the evidence you're hearing, so I think it's safe to say if I do the traditional, swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Is that adequate?
That would work.
Okay, great. All right. So if we get to that, we'll get to that. So we'll start. Thank you for that, Ms. Coleman. So we'll start with Ms. Lockhart for staff presentation. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Again, for the record, I am Dominique Lockhart with the zoning section. Item number 7 on the agenda is a request for continuance of detailed site plan DSP-21032 titled 5801 Arbor Street. The applicant for this case has requested a continuance to the June 29th Planning Board agenda to allow the Town of Cheverly Planning Board to make a recommendation on the proposed detailed site plan. Staff recommends approval of this request for continuance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Commissioners, questions for staff on the request for continuance?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I don't think this was in the Town of Cheverly's jurisdiction. I just wanted to verify if it was.
You mean within the boundaries of the town itself?
Yeah, like I don't think this property is actually annexed within the city limits. But I could be wrong, so I just wanted to verify that.
Do you know that, Ms. Lockhart, or perhaps Mr. Foreman will know that when we get to him?
Mr. Chair, this is James Hunt with the Development Review Division. I believe it may not be within the town's jurisdiction. However, since it's within 1 mile radius of the town, that's the reason why we have to reach out to the Town of Cheverly.
Okay, and my subsequent question would be like, why didn't we have that already in the staff report? Because we didn't have anything in there about recommendations or whether or not we had reached out to the town if they didn't provide any recommendations.
They haven't provided any comments to us as of yet. It was referred out to them, but they haven't given us any documentation.
Okay, so it might be useful just going forward if we do have cases that are within a jurisdiction of a municipality, or if it's within that 1 mile limit, if they just haven't responded, that it would be helpful, I think, to have that in the staff report, just to kind of cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's. But that's it for me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for staff? I'll turn to Mr. Foreman. You introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board. My name is Nate Foreman, and I am the attorney here on behalf of the applicant in this case. We are in agreement with Park and Planning staff request continuance. I do want to thank them for their continued assistance in trying to give us patience while we do work with the Town of Cheverly on this project. And Commissioner Dorner, if I could maybe answer your question about why the town has not provided any recommendations yet, in that we have been working with both the Town of Cheverly Mayor and City Council and their planning board, which serves as an advisory body on planning and zoning matters that are of interest to the town. And we've had trying to make sure that when they do respond, that they are going to be recommending support. So I think they haven't made any final decisions yet. And that's why there's been no anything introduced in the record. We've had issues with getting everyone to, a common ground. The town only meets once a month and the planning board only meets once a month. So when we don't get into a meeting in time, we kind of miss the window and a whole month goes by before we can actually get forward with any sort of discussion or debates among the whole planning board or among the whole mayor and town council. It is my understanding that after having met with the mayor and town council at least twice, the Town of Cheverly Planning Board at least 3 times to talk about concerns and modifications to our request, that we will, when we come back in June, we will have not only the recommendation of support from the Town of Cheverly, but a revised detailed site plan that we think would be more in line, or at least more appropriate for what would be aligned with the planning goals and principles for this project.
Mr. Foreman, let's not get anywhere close to the merits of it though, because this is just a request for a continuance.
Okay, my apologies, Mr. Chair, but yes, so I hope that provides a little bit of background as to why we haven't heard from the Town of Cheverly yet.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Anything else you want to bring to us, Mr. Foreman?
No, just thank you very much for your time and opportunity to speak this morning, and we are in favor of the continuance request.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none. I have two folks on the sign-up sheet. I have a Nicole Neese and a Sabino Epicino. Are you both on the line, or either of you on the line? If so, can you either make your voice heard or show up on camera?
Yes, I'm on the line. This is Nicole Neese.
Okay, Mr. I think it's a Mr. Epicino, Sabino. Okay, so it's just Ms. Neese. Ms. Neese, you do know there is what is before us is only a request for a continuance. Is that what you wish to speak to?
Yes.
Okay, all right, then I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Consider yourself sworn in, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. My name is
Identify
Nicole Neese.
yourself on the record formally, by the way, Ms. Neese.
Sounds good. My name is Nicole Neese. I'm the Cheverly West HOA president, which is neighboring to the property in question. In regard to the continuance, this has been on the agenda monthly since December, and the applicant did have the opportunity to meet with the town of Cheverly more than once. So I do have a concern in issuing this continuance, that the intention behind it is that we keep punting it down the road so that neighbors who have signed up to speak in the past and address their comments maybe miss the meeting, like has happened with one of our neighbors, Sabino Epicino, to voice their opposition to it and to present their testimony. So it has been monthly since December, and I know that they have already met with the town. And, you know, we have talked with the lawyer Nate Foreman ourselves in discussion with our concerns. So we would just hope that if this is continued again, maybe that we could put a firm deadline on this, just because we've been attending these meetings monthly since December, and they have had a chance to meet with the town. And we live in closer proximity than the town.
Thank you, Ms. Neese. I appreciate you taking the time to come testify. Some of this is, the procedures are such that their requests for continuance can be made, and we consider them at the time. I would certainly hope that this June 29th is ample time for the applicant so that this will be a final, as you suggest. You know, there's things that are not quite in our control around that, but we hear you loud and clear. So thank you again for taking the time to come and speak with us. Commissioners, any other questions for Ms. Neese? Okay. There's no one else who signed up to speak, so I'll close this hearing, such as it is. It is just a request for continuance. And what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request for continuance to June 29th for DSP-21032.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion for continuance?
Yeah, on discussion, do we need the applicant to waive the action limit date?
It's already been waived according to the staff report.
But was it waived until that particular date?
There's no date on it.
Well,
My understanding, it was waived indefinitely previously.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for asking. All right. If there's no further discussion, did I begin to call the roll already?
No.
Okay,
No.
all right. I will now. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
But
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Thank you, Ms. Lockhart.
Thank you very much.
Finally, on our agenda is item 8. This is Community Planning Division Central Avenue Blue Silver Line Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment. We'll have a presentation. This is an action item. We'll have a presentation from staff on this. We have Mr. Skavinsky. Good to see you, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Shapiro and members of the board. I'm Bill Skavinsky, project manager for the Central Avenue Blue Silver Line Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment. I am joined by Elena Perry, Deputy Project Manager, and Tony Feltz, Chief of Community Planning. The purpose of this agenda item is to request the approval to initiate an approval of an 8-month extension for the preparation of the Central Avenue Blue Silver Line Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment, as well as the approval and transmittal of the sector plans, goals, concepts, guidelines, public participation program, and draft resolution. So now I will provide a brief overview of the sector plan area and our general approach to developing the plan. Next slide, please. So here's a map of the proposed sector plan boundary that covers approximately 4,020 acres of central Prince George's County. The plan area is within subregion 4 and includes planning areas 72, 75A, and 75B. Also included are council districts 5, 6, and 7, the city of Seat Pleasant, and a portion of the town of Capitol Heights. The plan area is completely within a general plan 2035 established community, and it contains a large portion of the Central Avenue Blue Line Metro Corridor Sustainable Community designation. Geographically, the sector plan is located inside the I-495 Capitol Beltway and extends to the Washington, D.C. line with Maryland 214 or Central Avenue and the Metro Blue Silver Line bisecting the plan area. The plan is highlighted by the Capitol Heights, Addison Road, and Morgan Boulevard metro stations along those the blue silver lines, all of which are within a planned 2035 local center. Another plant area highlight is FedEx Field, just north of the Morgan Boulevard local center. So since the stadium's lease is expected to expire in 2027, it was decided to include that area into the planned boundary as well. And with the 3 local centers and FedEx Field being inside the sector plan boundary, as well as having that geographic advantage, there are transformative opportunities for the sector plan area if thoughtfully planned out. Next slide, please. Our objective is to produce a draft sector plan and propose sectional map amendment through an inclusive participation process by August of 2024. And just to highlight some of our major goals, we will identify and analyze existing conditions. We have been working on existing conditions report since this past fall and expect to have that done here by late summer, early spring. We will provide rezoning recommendations where appropriate, as well as develop goals and a unifying vision in collaboration with the community, and then provide policies and strategies to support the goals, as well as advancing Plan 2035. Next slide, please. Now, to further understand the sector plan's overarching purpose, here are some of the key questions identified by the project team. What are the feasible and complementary opportunities to transit-oriented development at the area's local transit centers? What are the appropriate recommendations for the rezoning of properties within the sector plan boundary? And how can the plan encourage market rate housing while implementing policies that support affordable housing that can also support aging in place? How does the community envision the future use of the FedEx Field property? What strategies can be implemented to address the need for healthy food access, placemaking, and targeted revitalization within the sector plan area? And lastly, how can development occur in the plant area to support safe multimodal transportation while preserving the area's parks and open space? Of course, the goals, concepts, and guidelines document has a longer list of questions as well as outlining how we will begin to answer them. Next slide, please. Community engagement and input is a major focus for the project team, and we recognize that some of the community members participated in previous studies and reports and plans for the area, and we will build off that wealth of knowledge from the prior efforts and provide updated recommendations where appropriate. The public participation program will be implemented by community planning, working in collaboration with public and private agencies and the consultant team. We will engage the community through a transparent and inclusive process while identifying and engaging those that have never participated before. Some other ways that we will engage the community include making all efforts to meet people where they are, such as the 3 metro stations, as well as any types of community events that take place. We will work in coordination with the consultant to more fully engage the Spanish-speaking community, and we will build interactive, accessible, and safe input mechanisms while also providing ongoing and open communication throughout the planning process. So ultimately, we want to inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower the community to the best of our ability and in cooperation with identified community partners. Next slide, please. Here's a snapshot of the schedule, summary of the project schedule. So of course, we're here in April, May of 23 with trying to get the plan initiated through planning board and district council. We do anticipate to initiate with district council on May 30th. We also expect to have our existing conditions report as well as an online existing conditions story map published late spring or early summer of this year. Once we initiate, we will then move into this summer 23 through spring of 2024, where we will conduct our community engagement and implement that public participation program, as well as begin drafting the sector plan. We anticipate a public release of the staff draft plan in October of 2024. And then we will move into the legislative timeline with a joint public hearing in November 2024 with anticipated planning board adoption in February of 2025. We will then move to council approval with May of 2025 being approval without a second joint public hearing. If a second joint public hearing is requested, then we would anticipate final approval in September of 2025. Next slide, please. Our current next steps include, of course, your approval and transmittal of the goals, concepts, guidelines, the public participation program, and the draft resolution to district council, and approval of the 8-month extension, as well as the district council resolution to initiate the sector plan and sectional map amendment, and their approval of the goals, concept, guidelines, and public participation program on May 30th. Next slide, please. So this concludes the presentation, and planning staff recommends and requests approval to initiate and approval of the 8-month extension to prepare a sector plan and concurrent sectional map amendment for the Central Avenue Blue Silver Line area of Planning Area 72, 75A, and 75B, and approval to transmit the recommended goals, concept, guidelines, and public participation program, and the draft resolution of initiation, and the request for an 8-month extension of the timeline to prepare the preliminary Central Avenue Blue Silver Line sector plan, sectional map amendment to the district council, And again, thank you, Chairman Shapiro and members of the board for your time and attention. The project team will now take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skavinsky and Ms. Perry. Well done. Questions for staff, commissioners? I've got one. Can you explain the rationale? If you can go back to the map, please. It was the second or third. There we go. That's fine. Can you, when we think of the Blue Line Corridor, yeah, go back to the map. When we think of the Blue Line Corridor, we are talking about the area that includes downtown Largo, which is not on this map. So if you could talk a little bit about what your rationale is for not including downtown Largo as part of this Blue Silver Line Sector Plan and Sectional Map Amendment.
Sure. So since downtown Largo Town Center has a active and recently approved sector plan already, as well as a lot of development taking place and is planned to occur in the near future, was decided to exclude that out of this sector plan boundary and kind of keep everything focused in on that corridor inside the Beltway. That way we can kind of look at ways that any type of future development, transit-oriented development, can complement what's going on at Largo Town Center.
Thank you for that. And for a question for you, maybe Mr. Phelps as well, Ms. Perry. It's going to come up as you're going through the community engagement process. We want to be telling the story of the Blue Line Corridor to include downtown Largo as one of the key anchors for that. So I'm just curious about how you manage that complexity of, you know, it's very much a part of what we're talking about, but we're not taking it up as part of the sector plan.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, one of the approaches we're taking is to, you know, not necessarily try to create a vision for the area that competes with what's going on at Largo, but rather a vision, a unified vision that complements the three local centers within the sector plan boundary, as well as complementing what is going on at Largo Town Center.
So you'll bring it, you'll need to be, I assume this means that as you're communicating with folks in the community, you'll be building off of the vision that there is for downtown Largo.
Correct, as well as, you know, a lot of the visioning that's been coming out recently from the county executives, Blue Line economic development platform, you know, as well as taking what the prior reports and studies and plans have said, build off of those, take what we have learned through the community input process, and kind of weave all of that together into a unifying vision for the area.
Thank you for that. Mr. Berlage, you have something?
Thank you very much, Derek Berlage, Acting Deputy Director. And Mr. Skavinsky has given a great answer to what is a very important question. I just want to add one more point, which is that the number one reason to do a sector plan is to change zoning. Largo Town Center, which has a recently approved sector plan, does not need any change in its zoning. It already has the highest density zoning available in the new zoning ordinance, which is regional, transit-oriented high, by virtue of it having been designated as one of the three downtowns in Plan 2035. So, but absolutely, Largo will be kept very much in mind and will be talked about a great deal during this process. The goal is for this sector plan to support and complement what's already happening in Largo.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, building on what Mr. Skavinsky said, and that very specific technical piece around why we do sector plans related to zoning. I just think that's going to be a very important message. So, because I don't want the message to the community to be that there's somehow a lost opportunity by not having the entirety there. The work's already been done for downtown Largo. And so this is just the next step of it, and it is a common vision. I think that's the message that folks are going to want to hear. I mean, that's what I want to hear, and it sounds like that's where you all are as well. So I appreciate the back and forth on this. Very helpful.
Certainly, of course.
Okay. Any other questions from staff, commissioners? Seeing none, look for a very long motion.
Can I ask for a question real quick?
Yeah, questions, Commissioner Joyner.
Yes, I wanted to find out, I know in the TOD plan for this that there is some emphasis on pedestrian and bike safety, and you've got different designs of roadways and how there's going to be kind of redesigned to make for safer kind of transit. But we have 3 metro stations in this area, and we consistently get questions when we have any applications coming up in these zones about the lack of connectivity and how we have, sure, great transit in these areas because we've got metro stations, but you can't get to them very easily by foot or bike, and you definitely can't get to them safely. So I was wondering how the plan is going to promote connectivity or promote safety in that kind of realm beyond just like making nice, pretty drawings where we put like trees between cars and people. Like how we're actually going to physically connect the trails or use the changes in the zoning to maybe turn on the chances or create the opportunities to connect segments that potentially aren't there already. So that way we can have new pathways.
Well, I can't speak to any specifics at this point in where we're at in the process, but I can say that we have been working closely with our Parks and Rec department and their work with the Central Avenue Connector Trail, as well as working with our transportation planning in the countywide planning division for ways that we can improve and promote safe and accessible connectivity from those existing neighborhoods into the corridor. As well, looking at things of where sidewalk improvements needed, where are potential areas for trail connections that may not exist or may not be planned at this point. So those are type of things that we'll work through the community input process and working in that coordination with the other resource staff we have available to kind of pull all of that together.
Okay, so it's really that last part that you mentioned, that the missing kind of trail segments and that could connect other places that I'm most interested in us having focus. And I think it would help to have an additional like slide or diagram on that in terms of like where high kind of like used trails or high areas that we could just make a small connection potentially and really start to create a much bigger network. Because when we get cases before us, it's almost too late. Like there's only a certain amount of money or a certain amount of like length that people can put into for applications. And it's sometimes almost like not the right point at which we can actually have this more comprehensive or bigger picture kind of view of planning. The sector plan is that chance. And having an opportunity to say, hey, we're missing pedestrian connections in this place, or you can't get across this highway to this other area that would be really nice if you're like walking on foot and maybe you don't have access to a car. I think we should really prioritize that, especially if we're trying to say we're doing transit-oriented development. To me, it's kind of pointless if we push TODs and we're making everyone drive to them and we're not thinking about other ways of getting to them. Because if I'm living around a metro, I'm intentionally choosing to live in this more urbanized areas so I don't have to drive my car as much. And I think that should be really the focus, is when we're developing up these TODs, we're looking at scale and we're looking at ways that you can use buses or you can use the metro and you don't have to be filling up the metro stations with cars necessarily. And we're promoting these other alternative forms of transit. So if you can think about that, then that would be great. And I would almost even look around these metro places and draw kind of like concentric circles of like a mile or 2 mile radii and then just pick places that just are kind of missing a very easy connection. And then thinking about if we rezone this and we get a redevelopment or infill development coming in, would that be a prime place that we could actually do it? And it might mean that it's going to take a few more years to actually activate that. But these should be kind of priorities that we're thinking about in a more comprehensive way. Instead of just drawing kind of nice figures of like how we're gonna take the streets and narrow them and like change kind of like speeds of cars. Like I want us also to be thinking about how we're putting the pieces together as well, more comprehensively. So we don't get the questions every single time we get an application in here without having an answer of here's what we're trying to do on a bigger scale.
Right. And I anticipate our transportation and mobility section of the plan will be fairly robust, with that being one of the focuses of this plan, with transit-oriented development and improving connectivity and bicycle and pedestrian and other non-automotive forms of transportation. So, and again, we'll work with that community to identify those areas that county and commission staff may not be aware of at this point. So, we'll rely on them to give us that information to identify, what's missing or where certain things could go to improve those conditions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you back to the slide of the key questions?
Yeah, some of those questions are different than what's in the broader report, and they actually had pedestrian and bike safety in there, but they don't have it here. So that's why I asked, because you actually got it in the report, and you have sections in there that actually highlight that. So I wanted to make sure that we're not cutting that since it got cut from the slides, and I was a little bit concerned that I want to make sure we don't forget about those things, and that should come to the forefront.
Yeah,
certainly.
I was having the same reaction, which is the connectivity piece, I think, should be at the top, in the sort of the top list of key questions as the communication goes out around that. I agree with you, Commissioner Joyner. Okay. Good, robust conversation. Any other questions on this? So then I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept adopt the recommendation of staff and approve the initiation of an 8-month extension to prepare a sector plan and SMA for the Central Avenue Blue Silver Line area, and approve the transmittal of the recommended goals, concepts, guidelines, and public participation program to include a draft resolution of initiation, in addition to approving the 8-month extension of the time frame to prepare the preliminary Central Avenue Blue Silver Line sector plan and SMA and transmit to the district council.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. And just to be clear, I think it was without a doubt noted through what you said, but the first approval is the first part of this is to approve initiation as well as the 8-month extension, and then the detail that you have. Okay, that's the motion. The second, any discussion on the motion? I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye, but I think it was second by Mr. Commissioner. What is your name?
Was the second Commissioner Giraldo? Okay, let the record reflect this was a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo.
Whatever his name is.
Whatever his name is, right. And the dog he brings with him. Commissioner Giraldo, your vote, please.
Vote aye.
And Commissioner Joyner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Mr. Skavinsky, Ms. Perry, thank you very much for your work on this. Looking forward to seeing how this progresses. Mr. Hunt, is there any further business to come forward today?
A wonderful time of day. There are no additional business items before the planning board. Thank you.
Okay, with no further business, commissioners, without objection, we are adjourned. Thanks
you.
everybody for your time.
Have a good day.
Have a great weekend.
Good day, good weekend, everybody.
This conference is no longer being recorded.